Hey y'all, quick video this morning for lesson 408. We are talking about plot and theme and the concept called mob mentality, which you maybe haven't heard of referred to like that, but I'm sure you have experienced. So here we go. Our goals today, we're going to define mob mentality, and then we're going to explain how it applies to To Kill a Mockingbird, and we're going to analyze how the developments in the plot in these chapters contribute to the overall development of our characters, especially Scout, and in the theme of the book, a theme that relates to like innocence or strength or justice. And so mob mentality and violence. Here's the thing you got to understand about mob mentality. Mob mentality is the idea that people act differently in groups than they do as individuals. And to give you an example of this, think about when there's a brawl in the cafeteria. It might start with two kids fighting. All of a sudden, the whole cafeteria crowds around, and you see people do stuff you wouldn't normally see them do. Kids who aren't necessarily fighters rush in to get their kicks in. Kids who aren't necessarily instigators are screaming, get him, slam him. Kids who are normally more to themselves are out there with their phone trying to get the best angle. So group behavior can be different in kind of a mob. They feel a lot of influence to do what other people are doing. And it happens all the time. It doesn't just happen in the Weaver cafeteria. The January 6th riots, when Donald Trump tried to still be president even though he lost the election. This is a great example of mob mentality. If you ever heard of the Salem witch trials, when, in like the late 16, early 1700s, they burned a bunch of women for being witches in Salem, Massachusetts. That was an example of mob mentality. Lynchings in the South, which is we talked about that a little bit in our background knowledge builder PowerPoint. You maybe have heard of it in history class. That's the specific way it applies to Kill a Mockingbird. We'll see in chapter 15 and 16 how that plays out. And the Holocaust, if you ever studied that around World War II, where Germany was trying to kill all the Jewish people, ordinary Germans who weren't necessarily murderers aided in that. And so, again, mob mentality. And you see it not necessarily to that dramatic extent, but at sporting events when, 10,000 people are chanting, you suck, use at somebody else. They wouldn't necessarily say it to their face, but they get, the crowd makes them do things they wouldn't normally do. And so generally speaking, when you hear the phrase mob mentality, it is meant as a negative. And if we were to just as we think about some reasons that people do get caught up supporting a mob, for one thing, when there's a ton of people in a crowd, you feel like you're sort of anonymous. You feel like, if everyone's doing it, no one's going to catch me. It kind of breaks down some of your individual thinking in when you're part of such a big group. In this PowerPoint that I'm going to attach, there are a few videos. You don't necessarily need to watch the whole video, but a couple minutes. It's the dancing guy. Sometimes actually kind of funny. So in this way, group psychology is used as like a joke and a lesson. Less funny here. This was bad. But again, an example of how mob mentality breaks down people's individual sense of right and wrong, and they kind of just go with the group. I don't want to play it. I just want to, golly. Here we go. And so, generally speaking, again, so just so we understand, mob mentality is the idea that people, when they're in a mob or in a group, they're more likely to behave badly. They're more likely to do things outside of their character. They're more likely to think they're not going to have to answer for their behavior. They're more likely to think they're going to get away with it. And then guilt is, if you feel like you did wrong, you feel guilty. But if you feel like everyone did wrong, you feel less guilty because it's not just all on you. It's on the whole group. And so that's how mob mentality works. Mob mentality is the idea that, people in groups are less rational and more likely to behave poorly or do things outside of the character than people who are just by themselves. And we're going to see that in To Kill a Mockingbird. And so we have the jailhouse scene, also called the mob scene or the lynch mob scene. We're going to these are the questions that I'm going to ask you to analyze for your practice activity. And then for the mastery check, I'm going to ask you, well, I can show you. For the practice activity, I'm going to ask you to kind of break down those questions. You can use the videos to help you. And then for the mastery check, I'm going to ask you to analyze the events of this chapter and its aftermath. How does it contribute to, what does it reveal to Scout about her community? What does it show her that Maycomb, Alabama is really like? And then how does this realization affect the development of her character or the novel's theme? And that you have to kind of make an inference for that. But I know you can do it. I know you can just think about it and kind of analyze how this all breaks down. The key is to read it. You got to read chapter 15. You got to read chapter 16. And that's it. If you need any help from me, just let me know. And again, this is lesson 408. It's on the blue papers. Later, guys.